Start up at 18
No, that's fine because that's most days. That's right. So you're fine. Okay, I'm going to start you as we speak now.
Okay, hi. We're the psychological and emotional problems for adolescents. I'm Kristen Tracy.
I'm Dave Delaney.
Tinsel. Okay, so our three sections, I did a section on anorexia, and then
I had a section on adolescent suicide.
I did self-esteem.
Adolescence is a time of many changes. You have physical changes as the students' bodies are developing, they're starting to grow, they're starting to mature. We have mental changes as students are starting to begin using higher level thinking, they're starting to notice new things, they're starting to explore their world a little bit more. We have the social changes where students are starting to form more peer groups. The influence of peers is a lot more influential in their decisions, and they start to make new relationships. But we're here to focus on the emotional changes.
Is that your? Yeah.
So as students begin to mature, as adolescents mature, they begin to undergo some of these changes. Their emotions are inconsistent. They may experience mood swings. Everything may be different from day to day, minute to minute. You never really know what to expect if you're in a room with adolescent students. Students may have many fears, real or imagined. They may fear schoolwork. They may fear problems in their relationships. They may fear disappointing their parents or their family. And coping with these changes may affect how they interact with the rest of their lives. If they're afraid of something, then it may affect how they act in school, how they act around their friends. But as they're doing this, as they're undergoing this process, each student is becoming a person in their own right, starting to develop their own personality and become their own person.
Alright, so we're going to talk about self-esteem first because sort of like suicide and eating disorders and stuff sort of has a root in how they see themselves and how they view themselves. So that's self-esteem. Okay. Definition I worked out for my paper was self-judgments of personal worth and global feelings of confidence and self-acceptance, which is really wordy, but pretty much how you view yourself and how you think others view you. That's sort of what your self-esteem is. And so why is self-esteem important? Well, it indicates your mental health, your stability. You know, if your self-esteem is low, you run risks of developing other issues. And so that's a lot with your adjustment, your social adjustment, because you don't think you're worthy, you're not going to go out and reach out to other people. And it influences your behavior throughout your life because, like I said, you're not going to be the one to stick your neck out there. So like, even if you're at a job, you'd be like, well, I'm just going to be here and keep my head down and do all that. And you're never going to be the one to get the promotion if you're just doing that. So people with high esteem have healthy coping mechanisms, are highly motivated, and have a positive emotional state. Pretty much, if something bad happens, they aren't going to be hurt as bad. They'll know how to bounce back. They'll know what to do to balance themselves to get there. And they are their own personal cheerleader. They really don't need the person on the sidelines saying, you can do it, come on, go for it. So that's the highly motivated bit. And they're the people who are always happy, the ones you want to be around, the ones who, if you're bad, they can bring you up. That's someone who has a high self-esteem. Someone who has low self-esteem, which is kind of sort of what we're going to be getting into today, you're running the risk of emotional behavioral disorders, which is kind of what those two will talk about. They are unmotivated. They're the ones who need the cheerleader. Initial signs of depression, eating disorders, and suicidal thoughts. But there is no evidence of an aggression connection between low self-esteem, because after things like Columbine and school shootings, those students were thought to have low self-esteem, and they were like, well, they must have snapped because they didn't like themselves, they didn't care for themselves. But actually, there's a stronger connection between people who have high self-esteem and this aggression if something bad happens. Because if you are really sure of yourself and then something happens, you don't know why, you can't explain why, like it's completely foreign to you, it's gonna hurt you much more than it would if you're sort of like, yeah, well, that happens, it's me. So there actually is not a connection with the low self-esteem student and the aggression. And a lot of what I did in my paper was what influences our self-esteem. So what apparently the single biggest one, which kind of surprised me because I thought it would have been like appearance for middle school children, but it was attachment to your family, to your guardians, to your parents. And it's the balancing act between that, because it's a time when you're trying to separate yourself, when you're trying to be independent, start to become your own person. But if you're too far away from your parents, you've lost your foundation and your grounding, and so you don't really know where you're going, which can bring down your self-esteem. But if you're too close as well, you don't know how to be your own person. You're too much depending on your parents, your mom, your dad, your aunt, uncle, whoever cares for you at home. And so that was the single biggest act, and that's why I have a one person here. I thought it was cute. Another one that was really important was the perceived support from your teachers. And like I said, if you don't have your family at home to back you up, you need some sort of authority figure, saying, hey, good job. And so even if you got a C on a test, if you used to get D's, having a C, it's like, and you get a little good job thing on your chest, and that would make my day. I mean, I got really excited when I did class. I was really, really bad, and all of a sudden I got a real good grade. And even if it wasn't the best grade, they were like, nice job, you studied. And I did study a lot. And the last one is, and this slide is peer groups. Peer groups is actually an issue in the negative for people's self-esteem. Because students usually attach to a peer group when they don't have attachment to their family. So if you don't have that grounding and you go too much in the direction of your peer group, it's sort of like gangs. They don't have the authority figure telling them what to do. They have each other telling them what to do, and they're 13 years old. I mean, they don't know everything they need to. They don't see the consequences of their actions as much as they should. So it's actually more dangerous to be attached more to your peer group than to your family at this age. Yes?
What if their family is like a negative? What if the family's not there for them and then they attach onto like good, friendly peers? Can that be a positive?
That could be a positive, yeah, but in general,
right.
The research I looked at said that. It is a case-by-case kind of thing,
right.
But in general. Something that surprised me was the school model itself could affect the self-esteem of students. And in particular, article looked at compared a middle school to a K-8 school in the same school district. It was in the Cleveland School District in Ohio. And they found that the students, they tested 6th grade students, and the ones in the middle school had lower self-esteem at the beginning of the year than the ones in the K-8. And their self-esteem grew slower throughout the year. And they think the reason is because, we said there were so many changes that come in middle school, everything that goes on, that there was more foundation for the people in the K-8 school because they were seeing the same teachers in the hallways and they saw some of the same people, and it was literally the same building. They didn't have to get used to a new building. Whereas middle school, they were thrown into everything new. And so having that and everything else, like that one bit of stability when everything else was changing, was thought to have helped them maintain a higher sense of self-esteem. I know, it surprised me too. Academic achievement is kind of linked, they're not really quite sure how it's affecting, because I read some that said, high self-esteem makes you have high grades, and some that said high grades make you have high self-esteem. So they know it's affecting in some way, but they're just not quite sure which direction it's going. So I guess how they're doing in school will affect how they are feeling, and how they are feeling will affect how they're doing in school, but they haven't quite decided which direction it's going yet. So there might be more of a case-by-case one with that one.
Do you have a citation?
In my paper.
Okay. Well, you made reference to Cleveland School District.
Yeah, that's in one of my sites in my paper. And the last main influence was perceived attractiveness, which I thought would have been the biggest influence at this time. And that's what the cartoon's for, and you can't see it because of this, but it says, okay, it's extreme, but so is the zit on my nose. It's like middle school. You're finally no one has cooties anymore, and you want to be closer to people, and your body's like, no, no.
Exactly.
You're a pizza fish. Your feet are going to be too big. You're going to fall over yourself. But I think that's it for me. So that's the effects on self-esteem. Oh, wrap up. Oh, I have a wrap up. See, I would have known this last week, or 2 weeks ago. So self-esteem in general, kind of low in middle school. It's going to be one of the lowest points throughout their lives, so you need to hike it up. It can affect their school performance, or performance might be affecting it. And their self-esteem will affect their ability to function in the world. So if they don't see themselves as worthy, they're not going to see why they should go out and do anything else. And it can lead to drastic consequences, like we will talk about.
I did my section on indicators of suicidal behavior in adolescents, and I found this quote while I was actually looking for some information for my paper, and I thought it was pretty apt. I think suicide is sort of like cancer was 50 years ago. People don't want to talk about it. They don't want to know about it. People are frightened of it. They don't understand when actually these issues are medically treatable. And that was by Judy Collins. And I thought, how true is that? How many times in your middle school years and in your school years at all was the issue of suicide even discussed? Or was it treated more like a taboo subject? You know, it might be something that was whispered about between friends or you hear about, but it's not something that people really feel comfortable talking about. And to be honest, when I started writing this paper, I wasn't really comfortable talking about it, but it's something that we need to know, we need to understand, especially with middle school students. To start off some general statistics, these are gathered from a variety of sources. A lot of these are actually from the US government. But 1 in 100,000 adolescents commit suicide, and as many as 1 in 4,000 have attempted it. Which, I thought that was a pretty high number, but a lot of times these cases may not get reported medically. I mean, they may go seek treatment, but it's not something that people like to talk about. It's not something that they like to make known. It's something that we need to be aware of. 50% of middle school students who think about suicide constantly have moved on to making a plan. And of those, 25% have attempted suicide. So, sometimes people make a comment, oh, this paper makes me want to go shoot myself. And, some people may just laugh at it, but it's not something that we really should be joking about. It's something that we need to be aware of, and we need to keep a closer eye on, and maybe offer some encouragement. For this paper, I studied some of the strongest indicators and some of the strongest contributors that they believe may contribute to adolescent suicide. One of the biggest ones they mentioned was drug use. And they just did a survey of middle school students in Tennessee. I think it was 4 districts in Tennessee middle schools. And of the school survey, over 40% of middle school students smoked, and over 40% drank. Now, I don't know about you, I come from a rural school also, and I knew it was certainly there, but I never realized how strong it was. I mean, you realize these are people who are 6th, 7th, 8th graders, and they're making choices like this. They're going to affect them the rest of their lives. This study showed a strong correlation between drug use and suicidal thoughts. A lot of people use drugs, not just as a social thing, but they also use it as a means of escape. A lot of people they drink whenever they can't cope, whenever they aren't sure how to cope, so they turn to alcohol. And that can lead to these thoughts, which, as we saw earlier, can lead to the actions and to actually attempting suicide. And if you ask most middle school students if they smoked, have they drank, the ones who have, I just went out and asked a few middle school students that I know personally. And of the ones who said that they had, I asked them, what do you think about it? Why do you do it? And they just ended up saying, it's something we do. They didn't see any serious consequences of it. They saw it as something to do with friends. But they're still developing, they're still trying to understand that they don't understand what kind of consequences this can have in the long term. Another strong influence is the influence of family and friends. Besides drug use, one of the greatest things in common about those with suicidal thoughts is having a family member or a friend who has hurt themselves or has attempted or committed suicide. They actually did this one in a study in England where they distributed questions to students from the 11th grade, which is the last mandatory grade of schooling in England. And they asked questions, you know, when you were in this age range, this middle school age range, you know, what were your thoughts about suicide? Had you thought about it? Have you ever made a plan, and have you ever attempted it? And, you know, other than drugs, they found that this is one of the strongest things that can contribute to it. Another strong contributor is circumstances early in life. In another study, which I don't have the name for, I'm sorry. In another study, they actually interviewed adults in life who had attempted suicide while they were adolescents. And they asked them about their life, you know, what they thought had maybe contributed to it, and what their early life was like. And they found those who had come from a family with, you know, financial problems when even they were as young as 5 or 6 years old were up to 3 times more likely to commit suicide or to attempt suicide. And those who came from broken homes or homes where they had parents who fought a lot were up to 5 times more likely. One of the other issues that was mentioned with in self-esteem was your student's self-image. This was actually taken from an interview of someone who had attempted suicide when they were in middle school. They were interviewed, I think, when they were 22. But how many of you can relate to this, or either thought something like this, or know somebody who said this? I just thought, oh God, what if I don't look good enough? What if they think I'm too skinny? What if I'm too ugly, or anything else like that? And I guess I just dwell on these things so much. I'd be like, oh, I think they're talking about me. I think I heard my name. I was paranoid that everyone was talking about me, hating me or something like that. It's like everyone against you, like you're being judged by every single person. This is Marie from Everell, 2005. I thought, how fitting is that? You don't have to, raise your hands, but just think about this. How many of you have ever thought something like that? You've worried about the way you look, about what everybody's saying about you. And for some people, especially those with lower self-esteem, they don't know how to handle that. Self-image is influenced by many factors. One of the biggest, though, is your peer acceptance. I don't know about you, but I've walked into middle school classrooms and I can almost immediately tell who is accepted by their peers and who isn't. You walk into the lunchroom and you see one student sitting off the table, or corner of the table by themselves. You walk in and you hear everybody else laughing at the student who just fell down, or who's not laughing with them. Obviously, they're laughing at him. Those who consider themselves as either over or underweight are more likely to attempt suicide than those who consider themselves average. I believe something like 5% more likely, which, it's not, this doesn't say those who are actually overweight or underweight, but it's all about the student's image, how they perceive themselves. And for a lot of these students, they're going through a lot of changes. They're developing, their bodies are changing, they're forming new friendships and changing old relationships. So they don't really have anything stable to hold on to if they don't have good friends, if they don't have strong teachers, if they don't have a good family life. Adolescent suicide has many factors. The ones that I've listed are just a few. I mean, it's a complicated, complex subject. There is no one stereotypical, this is the person who's at risk, this is the person who's fine. There are some warning signs that we can watch for as teachers. Some of these may include being fixated on death, writing poems, reading songs. They can also include depression. I mean, like I said earlier, we can see whenever we go into a classroom who's not being accepted, and we can see how it's hurting them. Those who make sympathy signs, they may have all of them, they may have none. But as teachers, it's our job to protect these students. And we can't just let them go and say, oh, they're just moody today, or oh, they'll get over it. They're, everything seems a big deal to them. I mean, but whenever, it's hard to imagine, as we're older, we've matured more now. But how many of you can remember what it felt like in 6th grade when you had a fight with your best friend and it seemed like the end of the world? Everything is important to them, and we can't just blow that off as teachers. We have to realize what's important to their life and how it's affecting them. As teachers, it is our duty to protect them. It is our duty to do all that we can to help them. If we suspect anything's wrong, we need to go see a counselor, someone who's trained with this. So it's all well and good to be a friend to the students, try and help them out, but really what they need is they need help from someone who knows what they're doing. And I think that adolescent suicide is one of the greatest tragedies that we may face as teachers. And anything that we can do to prevent it, I think we should.
And then I did my section on anorexia. Okay. So this is just a picture that I found, and the girl on the left or the girl on the right in the yellow dress is what she actually looks like, but when she looks in the mirror, this is what she sees, and it's kind of like a fun house mirror. You ever, it's a distortion of the body. So what is anorexia? Anorexia is a disease characterized by 15% below the normal body weight. They have a fear of gaining weight, and they eat 1,000 calories or less a day. And there are two types of anorexia. There's restrictive and there's binge eating. And restrictive is when the person doesn't eat, they might eat a little bit, but they lower what they eat. So like, for example, they might just eat like a snack for the day, or their lunch might be a couple crackers and a couple carrots. They watch what they eat, and they're not eating the calories that they need to. And then there's binge eating, which is when they eat normally or under normal, but as soon as they're done eating, they go and they vomit it back up because they need to eat, but they're afraid of getting the calories and getting the fat, so they get rid of that right away. According to ANAD, which is the National Association for Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Eating Disorders, these are some of the warning signs that we can watch for as teachers. There's deliberate self-starvation with weight loss, intense or persistent fear of gaining weight, refusal to eat, or they restrict their diet. They do a continuous diet, and there's excessive facial body hair loss because they don't have enough protein in their diet. They're a compulsive exerciser. They always have to be moving. They always run. They always do something to stay active. There's abnormal weight loss, sensitivity to cold, absence or irregular menstrual cycles, and hair loss. And I just wanted to show this video clip. This is a commercial that was on TV.
Anorexia. The saddest part is those who have it don't see it.
know what people with eating disorders see when they look in the mirror. And I thought that was a good thing, and you don't really see a lot of these things on TV. You see a lot of like the anti-drug commercials, but you don't see a lot of this on TV, which I thought was a good thing to show on TV because it's so common. Just a couple things. Most people think that anorexia only affects females, but it really doesn't. It affects both males and females. And in the United States alone, with a 10-year study, they found that 7 to 10 million women and 1 million men had anorexia or eating disorders. And the reasons why anorexia is such a big thing in the United States compared to other countries, a study that I saw, it's called Non-Fat Phobic Anorexias in British South American Asians. It focused on 2 different groups. It focused on South Asians and white English Americans living in England, and they found that the people from Asian descent are less likely to call themselves anorexic because their focus isn't on losing the weight. Their focus is they're staying healthy. They're not worried about what they look like. And they found that with that, because in South Asia there's such a tight nuclear family, and there's so much support that they're less likely to be considered to have an eating disorder compared to in America and England, where the families aren't so tight, they aren't so close, so we have problems with that. And there are problems in the media. Everyone sees it. You watch TV and there's all these diet commercials, there's all these things about losing weight, the drastic weight loss. You watch Biggest Loser and these people are losing all the weight, and people think, well, why can't I do that? And they're trying to do it in an unhealthy way. Another thing is pro-anorex websites, and there was an article in Time magazine which I thought was interesting, and it's called Anorexia Goes High Tech, and it said that with Yahoo alone, if you type in anorexia, it will come up with at least 400 websites devoted to pro-anorexia that people create. And I have it linked right here. This is one of them. And usually when you get to the website, there's warning signs that come on that say, anorexia is a serious thing. If you're here to make fun of us, don't enter. And there's at least 3 or 4 boxes that you have to go to. But this website right here, which is one of them, it's a community of people with eating disorders that stick together, that support each other, and I think that we as teachers need to be aware of these things because kids today are so technology advanced that they feel like they're so alone that to find someone in a forum that is dealing with the same thing that they are, they feel like they found someone that understands what they're going through. And like they have on here the different celebrities that they think are like the ideal. So they have pictures of Lindsay Lohan at her skinniest and Nicole Richie, people that they idolize when they look at it. There was another section in here, and I can't find it right now, but it was about how it's so influential in the media. They show the different Yahoo pages on how lose 10 pounds quick, do this. It's all over, not only just in the TV, it's all over the internet, it's everywhere. Okay, another reason why is friends, and as Michelle had stated, the low self-esteem. They don't think that they're worth anything. So they're trying to make themselves feel like they're worth it. And then I focused on treatment and prevention. I think that we as teachers need to create prevention programs in school, because a lot of schools have the DARE program and it's the anti-drug programs, but we don't focus on the body images that go through. And it said that 86% of people with eating disorders, their eating disorders they start their eating disorders before the age of 20. It says that 10% of those start at 10 years or younger, 33% start 11 to 15 years old, and 43% start 16 to 20. So I think that we as teachers, like I said with the programs, we need to focus on that because it'll help cut down on the onset of the eating disorders. And then I also focused on recovery. An article that I saw said that there's not a real criteria for recovery in eating disorders. There's inpatient and there's outpatient treatments, but a lot of it is really expensive. Okay, treatment is expensive. Inpatient treatment can cost $30,000 a month, and outpatient treatment can cost over $100,000 or more. So going back to programs in the school, we can eliminate this. And with the treatment, they focus on target weight. So they do a weekly weigh-in, and different treatment services require different criteria to release from the program. Like, you have to change the way that you look at yourself, or you have to hit a target weight and stay with that, like gain 3 pounds a week or something like that. And a lot of them use non-negotiable treatment, so the patients have to meet their goal. They can't compromise on what's going on. So it's not like, well, I gained a pound this week, so I'm getting better, but I'm not. And then the studies show that there's a recovery rate between 17%. One showed that there was 17 to 77% recovery, and another showed 0 to 92% recovery. And although patients are cured, many still restrict what they eat. And they have a high rate of depression, anorexia, obesity. And they say that it takes 12 months for recovery of weight and 24 months for the psychological recovery. And then I just wanted to quickly share this. I got this off of one of the Pro-Ana websites, and it's a poem that someone wrote about it, and it's called "The Voice is So Much Stronger." Your lips mouth the words, you're getting thinner, but all I see are your lying eyes. I'm looking at my double chin and flabby thighs. I don't hear the words, I don't listen to the sound. I just watch your eyes skimming my fat body. I get home and immediately weigh myself. I've lost another pound. I should feel happy, and I do for a moment. But the minute I turn around and I see myself in the mirror, everything changes. Everything goes back to how it was. I'm fat. I'm lazy. There isn't anything else I can do. There isn't anything else to fix me. My stomach growls. It tries to tell me to feed it. But the other voice is so much stronger, so much more persistent. You're fat. You're ugly. You're simply not worthy of love. It says with a smirk. A small smile on its face because it knows that I know it's right. All I can do is follow its advice because it knows how to make me thin, how to make me pretty, how to make me lovable. Don't eat that. Look at how many calories it has. I checked. 90 calories for one piece of bread. Not worth it. Nothing seems worth it. Nothing tastes as good as thin feels. Nothing is worth it because the voice is always stronger. She always wins.
All right, well, that just gave a voice to someone with this issue. We're also going to put a face to it. I've asked permission to use this person's picture.
Thank you for
This is a 13-year-old girl, so a true story. She had severe low self-esteem in 8th grade. She thought she could never live up to what her sisters had done before her. She's the youngest of 3. And she thought that there was this line up here that her parents had set. And she thought she was coming somewhere in here. And I think she looks pretty happy in that picture. You know, she's kind of cute. You know, she thought she was ugly, so she had issues with her body and how she looked. She thought she was an idiot. She thought she couldn't be smart because she didn't pull straight A's. And so she had a moment when she snapped. About a week after this photo was taken, she got a C on an English test. And she was going to pull a C in the class. She was not happy about this. Came home from school, you know, kissed her mom on the cheek, hey, how you doing? You know, went up to go do her unwrap from school, you know, get a snack thing. But instead of doing that, she went into the bathroom, took apart a Bic razor, and held the blade to her wrist. But she didn't push down. She was brave enough to go and tell her father that she wanted to kill herself. Now the reason I know all this is my little sister. I was a freshman here. It was my freshman year here when I got the call from my mother. You know, it took 10 minutes to calm her down and figure out what was going on. And I mean, looking back, we should have seen it. She always said, oh, but you're smarter, oh, but you're prettier. She never thought she was good enough, and we should have seen that her self-esteem was that bad. That she didn't think she was pretty, that she could end up like this, and we didn't. And so, this is a picture to put to it. That, you know, this kid will be sitting in your classroom. You might not see it because you don't want to, but you have to. I mean, most won't be as brave as my sister. They won't put that blade down. They won't go tell their parents. Now, she's good today. So she's fine. She's junior. She's happy, and she's more than willing to go and show me up now. Yeah. Like, we had the same teacher for a class, and like we had to write the same essay pretty much off this prompt, and she got a better grade than me, and she's like, look, look, I did better. I'm like, yeah, shut up. But that's what you have. That's what we're trying to say. I mean, that's your 8th grade student sitting in your classroom who you might not think is anything wrong. But if you have that inkling that maybe you have to do something.